Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 most important Ark Tames, so let's get straight into it. In number 10 I've decided to put the Yeti, as bosses are quite a big part of a general Ark player's playing, and obviously this creature is going to drastically help your performance in a given boss scenario. Although sometimes you can get away without using one, it is still good practice to have one. And it is so much better that they're in the game than if they weren't in the game. Although a bit of a late addition to Ark coming in 2017, they have been used non-stop ever since, and they really do deserve to be an important Ark creature. Obviously, these creatures are going to be widely used by so many people, and when they do what they do, where you get, I think it's 25% damage reduction and 25% increased damage with that courage roll, it is just such an advantage to you. You really can't, not use it in a sense, because you just might as well. They're so easy to tame and to obtain, and the benefits you can get from them is just great. And if you're ever wondering what you're actually going to ride in a boss fight, just ride on a Yeti, and that's probably going to be a job, especially if you're playing on single player. Next up, I've decided to put the Rex, as this has definitely been an important creature across Ark's life and history. Of course, you cannot really have Ark without the Rex, and although maybe, yes, it's not the most commonly used boss creature anymore, or most liked one, at least maybe from my perspective, because I don't really use these things a whole lot from my playing, is what I meant to say. Although people still use these things all the time, they really do deserve to make the list as a fantastic boss creature. Spinos are also quite important as well, but in terms of the scale between Rexes and Spinos and how they're used for boss fights, Rexes always take the win in terms of the importance of them, so hence why I'm putting them here instead, because they really do need to be on this list. Although maybe not the most important to me, they definitely are a very important Ark creature, and the game would definitely not be the same without them. It is a really good thing that they're in the game, because their health is great, their damage is great. Although yes, maybe their weight and stamina isn't something to be proud of, it still is going to carry you through those boss fights, as you're not going to be riding on these things anyway. Their stamina is literally infinite when you're not riding on them, and you're going to have a perfectly fine time with these creatures, as their health and damage is what you're going to need for those boss fights, especially the longer ones. Some other creatures do fall behind because of the lower health, whereas the Rex can still keep pushing through. Good example for that is the boss at the end of Genesis Part 1. It's quite a lengthy fight, and Rexes are one of the only good options for it. Next up, we've got the Maywing, and this is really a cornerstone changing creature. It is an absolute game changer when this creature actually did release into the wild of Ark with Genesis Part 2. It is by far the best travel mount which you'll find out there. It just has so much speed, and its saddle is obtained at level 18, so there's really nothing which can be said negatively about this creature, apart from the fact it's a glider and not a flyer. But still, in low difference in elevation environments, you're going to not struggle whatsoever to still gain all of that speed. They're also pretty great swimmers as well, and their underwater flying, that doesn't make sense, underwater movement is actually pretty decent as well. You might not expect that from a creature like this, but it kind of does make sense when you consider them a sort of platypus type creature. They also do act as a portable feeding trough as well, with that slightly disturbing animation that we all know nowadays, and this is just useful if you're a breeder. It's going to feed all the creatures around it. They can also steal baby creatures from enemies too, and carry 4 in their saddle, and they can gather berries as well, which is just a nice ability to have on top of it all. In number 7, I've decided to put the Pteranodon, as this, although maybe not as good as a flyer, or a glider I should say, as the Maywing. I would take the Maywing over the Pteranodon any day. This is more important in Ark than the Maywing, as it's often going to be the first flyer that you ever obtain, and it's been here since day 1, and we've been using these things basically for 9 years now, which is actually a little bit insane when you think about it. Also, I'm not sure if they did have that spin ability when they first released, or I didn't use it either way, they have definitely progressed in a way, I'm pretty sure, over Ark's history and life. Obviously, you've got all the variants of Pteranodons as well, although I'm pretty sure all of them aren't tameable because you've just got the corrupted Pteranodons on extinction. That's besides the point. The Pteranodon has been and still is actually, I don't know why I'm failing so much with this one, a really great and useful flyer for many players out there. The only real difficulty in obtaining one, at least for your first time, is the chitin and keratin required for the saddle. At least I've always struggled with that a little bit. Not really nowadays, because, you know, just killing a few insects and you can get it all done. But if you don't know exactly what to do and then you start farming carb enemies for ages, especially if you're on official rates, it can take some serious elbow grease to actually get through a tame like that. But yes, it's been very influential and it's deserving of the list. I've decided to put the Stego on the list as I find this is one of the best berry gatherers out there, and the game would simply not be the same if this creature wasn't here. Yes, the Trike and the Parasaur have played their part too, but in my opinion the Stego has played the biggest of them all. While being still a relatively easy creature to get, just being slightly harder than something like the Parasaur or the Trike. Obviously the Trike's harder than the Parasaur, it's kind of a progression system. You would get loads and loads of berries out of a creature like this, and although they were slow and their stamina wasn't the best, you could still level it up and get it to be reasonably good pretty quickly. And on top of all of this too, they are just so good at berry gathering, especially considering their size. A Bronto may be better at gathering all of your berries in terms of volume of berries, but in terms of just general like taming to berry gathering ratio, or ease of taming to the amount of berries that you can actually obtain from a creature like this, it is insane. And obviously with the TLC as well, these are great turret soakers, so that is a really useful thing for PvP players as well. They just have so much versatility and they're so useful as berry gatherers, useful as obviously turret soakers. We all know the Stego, and at some point we're probably all going to tame the Stego, unless, you know, you barely play any Ark. At number 5, I am putting the Theory, as I find this is just such a good gatherer of so many resources and also a good boss creature on top of it. It has been really important to Ark. Again, you could say the Mostrops is a great gatherer of organic polymer and fiber, and yes, definitely for the organic poly, I do prefer the fiber gathering of the Theory, and arguably fiber is a much more important resource. Actually, not even arguably, it just simply is a much more important resource, and to have a creature that can gather it very well means that you don't have to go around using your hands on all of those bushes just to get yourself some fiber, because Ark definitely requires a lot of fiber, or having to craft a sickle and just go through loads of bushes. Still, with the sickle you can get quite a handful of fiber, but it's just much more fun to do with a creature like the Tickle Chicken. That's partly where its name comes from, because it kind of looks like it's tickling the grass, and it's got the, you know, it's got the long tickle fingers. They wouldn't tickle if they were actually in real life, they would probably just slice you to bits. They can also gather loads of wood and thatch on top of that, and meat, hide, chitin, keratin, all those drops that you get from creatures, because at the end of the day they can harvest bodies, which most herbivores actually can't do, and it's a really nice ability for this creature to have. Although taming can be a little bit difficult and time consuming, the saddle was unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
And what can really get better than that? Continuing on, I've decided to put the Desert Modus here, and although a recent addition, it has really changed the sort of progression of taming in the game, as that Sanguine Elixir, 30% of the tame just done like that with a click of a button. It really does add something, okay? That it just changes up the game dynamic for some difficult or longer tames. On top of this, it can also gather blood bags, which has been something which has been an absolute pain to do until the Desert Modus released. It is also just a very fast glider, and it can pick players off mounts with absolute ease in given PvP scenarios, so you really won't struggle whatsoever to you know, use this thing for PvP uses, because they are just goated at that in my own words. But also just for PvE, obviously that taming is insane. The blood bag gathering also makes them really good for taming bloodstalkers, and I love that creature. I'll give it a brief honorable mention as an important Ark Tame, although it doesn't deserve to be on this list in my opinion, just because the other creatures here are a little bit more important than it. At number 3, we have got the Ark Tames, and this has been here just for so long nowadays. It's been here since day 1, I'm pretty confident, and on the island this is an absolute lifesaver. While the Pteranodon will probably be your first flyer, this is where the game is really going to change for you. You're going to notice a lot of progression difference when you get yourselves an RG. The weight and stamina difference between the Pteranodon and the RG is absolutely insane, especially considering their weight reduction on things like crystal, metal and obsidian. Don't know what crystal is. Guess I have to make a mod and make crystal now. Either way, these creatures are great for transporting all of those goods, and their saddle acts as a portable smithy too, especially if I'm doing caving, I find, and an Artiplura gets my armor and just completely destroys it. I like to do 3 caves in one go instead of just going back to my base, because my base is usually in the north and quite a lot of the caves are located in central and southern regions. I like to do just a few in one go, and if I have some metal stored in my RG, obviously smelted, I can repair my flat gear before going to the next cave instead of having to go all the way back. Just a tip that I like to use a lot of the time. If you pair this thing with an Anki or a Dodic as well, you're going to get a lot of great gathering out of this creature, because you know those creatures can gather like there is no tomorrow, and with the weight reduction it is just great to have. They can also carry 2 creatures as well. They can carry a small one in your beak, so if you want to bring your dodo along with your adventures, then you can. And the regen buff which they have when you kill something and eat it, it is very welcome. In number 2, I'm putting the baryonyx, as caving is arguably one of the most important parts of the Ark game. Yes, those bosses are going to be an important part, but you can't even come close to doing any of them unless you've done the caves, because the artifacts are required, and this being just such a simple but yet so effective caving mount, it really does deserve to be on the list here for me. This creature can be found on the swamp biome, or just generally any river biome on ASA. On ASC, look in the swamp biome. On ASA, the spawns seem to be a little bit bugged, so you can kind of find them along any river, but if you can't find any, always go to the swamp, and that is going to be probably your safest bet. They have a very high amount of mobility too for a carnivore, and it does make sense considering their size. They can also jump a little bit as well if you want to go Mario style, I guess, and the spinner sack on top of it makes it sort of Mario Galaxy style. It can stun creatures up to the size of a Megalodon, and it's pretty decent for the underwater caves too, because it is a very nice swimmer. The reason why it's just so great for caving is the damage and health and mobility is simply so amazing for doing those caves, and on top of that it is the perfect size to fit into basically all of them. Don't try the artifacts of the Skylord cave though, because that will never work in your favour, and that is why I find these creatures just to be so important. Now for me, this is my most important Ark Tame of all time, the Deinonychus. It is a great one for caving like the Baryonyx 2, and it's even smaller and more mobile, and on top of that it deals the bleed ability, but it is insane for bosses too and general travel around the map, and it's the only Ark creature out there that can deal bleed damage to bosses. And sometimes when I'm with my pack of Deinonychuses, and actually most of the times, I'll skip out on using something like the UT, because the boss is only lasting about a minute and a half, 2 minutes anyway. It really does not make any difference, and maybe just lugging a UT around, it's not really what I want, and I want to be riding on one of the Deinonychuses to actually get it out and done as quick as possible. So the UT would essentially basically be doing nothing. Obviously I could set it to do it, but still I wouldn't really want that. It just kind of makes that scenario a little bit more messy, so that would be the only time that I wouldn't use it. The Deinonychuses aren't quite as good for the longer boss fights. Sometimes their health can pull them back a little bit, but if you do have some health mutations, you can actually go through even the alpha boss fights on Gen 1 on that Master Controller boss. I've done it before. Just, you know, you are going to need some pretty buffed up Deinonychuses for that. They also take no ball damage, which is just a nice addition for them to have, and scaling walls or vertical surfaces is an absolute ease, as they can simply jump across them and up them. It is going to be one of the easiest things that you encounter with this creature. It's general travel around the map. It is absolutely insane how good these things are as traveling mounts. and they're just so good at such a wide variety of things. I really do need to put them in at the number 1 spot. But anyway, that is the end of today's video. I really hope that you all did enjoy, as I definitely did enjoy making this one. As always, comment down below what is the most important Ark Tame to you, and if you didn't agree with this, then put your 10 in the comments below, and I will see you all in the next one.